Welcome to Almost Famous, Lost Heroes and Forgotten Legends, the podcast dedicated to uncovering the brilliant individuals whose groundbreaking contributions were overlooked, suppressed, or simply lost to history. Today, we delve into the life of a true revolutionary, a figure whose fire and conviction helped ignite a movement, yet whose story was, for too long, sidelined even by the cause she championed. Her name is Sylvia Rivera. But before we begin today's episode, please note that this story contains discussions of childhood trauma, suicide, physical and sexual violence, substance abuse, and discrimination. We'll also be discussing survival sex work and systemic oppression. Please take care of yourself while listening, and feel free to pause if you need to. Resources are available in our show notes. Born Sylvia Ray Rivera in 1951 in New York City, to Puerto Rican and Venezuelan parents, her life was an embodiment of intersectional struggle. From a young age, she was a radical, a self-proclaimed revolutionist. Her passionate advocacy extended beyond the LGBTQ+ community, reaching out to those affected by poverty and racial discrimination, leaving a legacy of fierce activism and compassionate outreach. Our mission today is to uncover how Sylvia Rivera, a trans Latina woman of color, fought simultaneously against transphobia, racism, and class oppression within and beyond the LGBTQ+ movements. We'll explore her foundational work, the tensions she navigated, and the profound impact she had, reminding us how revolutionary social change often relies on those most marginalized, whose stories are often the first to be erased. Sylvia's journey began amidst immense hardship. Her father was absent from her life, and tragically, her mother died by her own hand when Sylvia was just 3 years old. Raised by her grandmother, Sylvia faced rejection and physical mistreatment for her effeminate behavior and early experimentation with clothing and makeup. The mockery and altercations at school led her to abandon formal education. And by the age of 10 or 11, Sylvia ran away from home, finding herself on the streets, resorting to survival work around 42nd Street to survive. It was on these streets that Sylvia found her chosen family, a community of young drag queens and survival sex workers who embraced her. With their support, she adopted the name Sylvia and began identifying as a drag queen. It was within the work around 42nd Street to survive that Sylvia's political consciousness blossomed. As she recounted, they would often discuss their shared political and material realities. We'd be getting high or something, and we'd start talking politics. And about when things were going to change for us as human beings. This period also saw her engagement in broader social movements, including the Black Liberation Movement and the Peace Movement, even before the pivotal Stonewall Uprising. This early immersion in multiple struggles foreshadowed the intersectional nature of her life's work. Early LGBTQ+ liberation and pride origins cannot be fully understood without Sylvia Rivera. The Stonewall riots of June 1969 marked a pivotal moment, a spontaneous uprising sparked by a police raid on the Stonewall Inn, a gay bar in New York City's Greenwich Village. This was not merely a bar brawl. It was a furious pushback against police harassment and state violence that galvanized the modern gay liberation movement. Rivera's connection to Stonewall, while historically debated, reflects the complexity of preserving queer history. At just 17 years old, Rivera claimed to have participated in the riots, describing the moment with electrifying clarity. "I'm glad I was in the Stonewall riot. I remember when someone threw a Molotov cocktail, I thought, my God, the revolution is here. The revolution is finally here. However, historians David Carter and Martin Duberman, along with several eyewitnesses including Marsha P. Johnson, Bob Kohler, and Randy Wicker, have questioned Rivera's presence during the initial uprising. Johnson herself told multiple credible witnesses that Rivera was uptown in Bryant Park at the time of the riots. What remains undisputed is Rivera's immediate and profound involvement in the post-Stonewall movement. Within months, she was deeply engaged with the Gay Liberation Front and later the Gay Activist Alliance, becoming a fierce advocate for those most marginalized within the emerging movement. However, as the gay rights movement began to gain momentum and seek wider acceptance, deep tensions between cisgender gay activists and trans leaders like Sylvia Rivera quickly emerged. The mainstream movement increasingly sought to distance itself from its more radical origins, and from individuals like Sylvia and her best friend, Marsha P. Johnson. Rivera keenly observed this shift, noting, "When things started getting more mainstream, it was like, we don't need you no more." This marginalization was acutely felt during the efforts to pass a gay rights bill in New York City. Sylvia tirelessly campaigned for the inclusion of trans people in the legislation, even getting arrested for petitioning in Times Square. Yet, despite her hard work, trans protections were ultimately removed from the bill in a backroom deal by nice conservative gay white men who aimed to make it more palatable to politicians. Sylvia felt this as a profound betrayal, famously declaring, "Hell hath no fury like a drag queen scorned." This deep-seated frustration culminated in her powerful, unscripted, "Y'all better quiet down" speech at the 1973 Christopher Street Liberation Day rally. Sylvia fought her way through the crowd and onto the stage, where she was met with jeers and boos. Ignoring calls to "shut the fuck up," her speech was a scathing indictment of the movement's neglect of its most vulnerable members. In a raw, emotional delivery, she confronted the audience. "I have been to jail. I have been raped and beaten many times. I have lost my job. I have lost my apartment for gay liberation. And you all treat me this way? What the fuck's wrong with you all? Think about that." This moment, captured on video, vividly portrays the profound schisms within the early gay liberation movement, highlighting the physical and emotional toll of truth-telling. A link to a digitalized video of the original 16mm film rediscovered by a former staff member of the Lesbian Herstory Archives in New York City can be found in the show notes. It's a powerful and emotional video. Sylvia Rivera's experiences also brought to the forefront the severe homelessness crisis among queer youth and the urgent need for direct action. Recognizing that the mainstream gay organizations were failing those most in need, Sylvia and Marsha P. Johnson co-founded Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, or STAR, in 1970. This was a truly groundbreaking initiative. Through Star House, they provided shelter, food, and clothing for homeless queer youth, trans people, and sex workers, who were often rejected by both their families and society at large. Sylvia and Marsha financed Star House by hustling on the streets themselves, ensuring these young people had a safe space and a chosen family. Sylvia, despite being only 19 years old at the time, became like a mother to many of these residents. STAR's mission was deeply rooted in the intersectionality of race, class, and gender identity. they understood that their community faced multiple layers of oppression, as trans people, as people of color, as poor, and as sex workers. This holistic approach led them to ally with revolutionary groups like the Young Lords and the Black Panther Party, who, unlike many mainstream gay organizations, offered them respect and solidarity as human beings. This challenged the narrow, single-issue politics that sought to define the gay rights movement, emphasizing that true liberation required addressing all forms of oppression simultaneously. Despite her profound impact, Sylvia Rivera, like many other trans women of color, faced persistent media portrayal and historical erasure. For decades, her contributions were minimized, and her story was often pushed to the margins of mainstream LGBTQ+ narratives. She endured misgendering and denunciation even from within the movement she helped build, with mainstream and gay publications often excluding or sensationalizing trans women of color. Understanding Rivera's identity requires acknowledging the historical context of gender terminology. The word transgender wasn't widely used until the 1990s as an umbrella term, though earlier variations appeared in the 1960s through activists like Virginia Prince. Rivera herself used the available language of her time, identifying as a drag queen, transvestite, half-sister, and later as gay in an inclusive sense that encompassed her community. Importantly, Rivera's relationship with labels evolved throughout her life, and in her later years, she expressed frustration with categorization itself. "I'm tired of being labeled. I don't even like the label transgender. I'm tired of living with labels. I just want to be who I am. I am Sylvia Rivera." Rather than viewing historical terms as simply outdated or offensive, it's more accurate to recognize them as the language Rivera and her contemporaries used to define themselves within the constraints of their era. This linguistic evolution reflects both changing social understanding and Rivera's own journey of self-definition. The erasure had devastating personal consequences. Sylvia struggled with homelessness, substance abuse, and even attempted suicide after feeling betrayed and abandoned by the movement. As she reflected in 1995, "The movement had put me on the shelf, but they took me down and dusted me off. After that, I went back on the shelf." However, Sylvia Rivera's resilience was indomitable. She re-emerged in the 1990s, rejoining the movement and continuing her advocacy for trans inclusion in legislation. In 1997, she found stability at Transy House, a transgender collective in Park Slope, Brooklyn, founded by Rusty Mae Moore and Chelsea Goodwin. This housing provided Rivera with the security she needed to resume full-time activism. Following the brutal murder of transgender woman Amanda Milan outside the Port Authority bus terminal in June 2000, Rivera was galvanized into action. She worked to organize Milan's memorial service and, on January 6, 2001, formally announced the revival of STAR, this time as Street Transgender Action Revolutionaries, to ensure Milan's death would not be forgotten and to fight against anti-trans violence. Rivera remained driven by a moral duty to her community until her death from liver cancer on February 19, 2002. In the years following her death, Sylvia's legacy has experienced a well-deserved resurgence of recognition. She has been honored with street namings, a portrait in the National Portrait Gallery, making her the first transgender activist to be included, and monuments alongside Marsha P. Johnson. The Sylvia Rivera Law Project, founded in August 2002, continues her vital work, focusing on legal services and policy advocacy for trans people of color and low-income individuals. Her "Y'all better quiet down" speech, once met with hostility, is now widely shared and serves as a powerful call to action for contemporary transgender activists, inspiring new futures and possibilities.
Sylvia Rivera's life story is a powerful testament to the fact that revolutionary social change often comes from the most marginalized voices, whose battles are fought on multiple fronts against interwoven systems of oppression. Her unwavering commitment to justice for the invisible and discarded reminds us that liberation is truly a collective process. As we conclude this episode of Almost Famous, we hope Sylvia Rivera's legacy resonates, prompting us to look beyond conventional narratives and ensure that the vital contributions of all individuals, especially those who have been systematically erased, are fully acknowledged and celebrated. Understanding their struggles, their triumphs, and their what might have been is not just about correcting the past, it's about building a more just and inclusive future. If you're as fascinated by these stories as we are, please subscribe to the Almost Famous Lost Heroes and Forgotten Legends podcast, wherever you're listening. Your subscription helps us unearth more of these crucial narratives and ensures they get the recognition they deserve. We want to hear from you. What almost famous figure do you think deserves more recognition? Leave a comment, a review, or join the conversation and suggest future topics on our main YouTube channel, Almost Famous Lost Heroes and Forgotten Legends, helping us continue this vital work. Join us next time as we delve into another forgotten tale of unknown scientists, lost explorers, overlooked artists, or inventors on Almost Famous. Because remarkable people exist in every era, sometimes they just need someone to tell their story properly. Until then, keep exploring.